Hello, welcome to another Becoming a Modern Man. We are playing Monument Sisters. This is part of another league I actually played a while back in real time. I originally recorded it live, but the whole game ended up being quite frustrating. So we're playing against Thopter Foundry, or Urza's Foundry. I suppose Urza Foundry is actually a card. Thopter Foundry with Urza. So it's kind of like an infinite combo. It's kind of doing what we're doing, but on a more infinite combo-y kind of scale. So yeah, as you can possibly imagine, this match ended up being quite frustrating for various reasons, but you will get to see some exciting stuff. So and also for completeness, I wanted to record this, but yeah, this is a replay, unfortunately. But I don't think you would have wanted to watch the live version. It would have been very long and quite painful for everyone involved. So a speeded up version is, I think, will be appreciated. So we keep this hand. It's not the best, but we do have Squadron Hawk to fill up our hand, and this Force of Virtue, which can potentially make that a little bit faster. So it seems like the apocalypse is happening outside currently. No, just an aeroplane flying over and. Apparently some sirens going off as well. It's also incredibly hot today. One of the hottest days on record here. So if the computer makes a lot of noise or the fan makes a lot of noise, that's why. So here we are going to play Squadron Hawk. We draw a Ketra's Monument, which is nice. We are going to get 2 Squadron Hawks here rather than the full 3. We actually have 6 cards in hand. So this is just a thing to generally consider when you've got a Squadron Hawk and you cast it. It's not always right to just get every card. If you've got too many cards, you're going to get forced to discard. We want to pitch 1 to Force of Virtue though, so I decided to get 2 here. We are going to have to pitch a land at the end of turn, but I think that way we can get Force of Virtue onto the board, which will be nice, and then use the second Squadron Hawk to find the final Squadron Hawk. So Force of Virtue comes into play. Our opponent assembles their combo. They do need mana to their combo, so we aren't just dead to them assembling this combo. We can battle through it, but it really depends how things go. It's certainly not good for us, of course. So fetch up the next Squadron Hawk, attack for 2 here. That's the turn. Drew Sky Hussar, so we can actually draw some cards as well. One plays another Thopter Foundry, which doesn't really do a whole lot at the moment. Actually, not entirely sure why they bothered to play that, but there you go. We're going to run out a Ketra's Monument here, and then we can play a 1-mana Hawk and produce a token. I swing in here. It's definitely the wrong thing to do. I didn't click that this Mox Opal was ready to go, so Mox Opal allows our opponent to activate Thopter Foundry's ability, which makes a 2/3 Thopter, so we end up throwing away a Squadron Hawk for the sake of 2 damage, which probably wasn't the best of ideas. So here I'm going to draw a card just to get deeper into our deck. It seems like planes are flying over constantly now, but hopefully you can still hear me. It's not usually this bad outside my house. So I'm going to play Soul's Attendant. Our opponent's going to activate Thopter Foundry a bunch of times to obviously avoid us gaining a bunch of life. But yeah, this is kind of the interesting bit, although maybe it's not terribly interesting. Obviously, Soul's Attendant and Soul Warden are going to gain us a lot of life from our opponent, just activating Thopter Foundry a lot. Doesn't necessarily win us a game. Obviously, our opponent can then attack with those Thopters and get damage in, but it does make for an interesting sort of face-off, though I think it's more technical than actual, in that the reason that our opponent might not make a bunch of Thopters to Voiders gaining life is probably more just because there's a lot of triggers involved and it's going to take up a lot of time rather than actually being the wrong thing to do. I think generally they just want to keep making Thopters, and then eventually they'll be in a position where they can swing through us and it won't really matter. Anyway, they drop Khan, the Great Creator, and find Mycosynth, which obviously would be pretty problematic for us if it is stuck. So I decided to go aggressively after the Khan. I don't know if it's necessarily the right play. They are a little bit of a way off getting to the 6 mana for Lattice, but I think it's defensible, this attack. So we're going to attack with everything. They can actually block all our creatures and save Khan if they want. We activate the Chefnet Dunes before, so they don't have any good blocks. Realistically, they're going to double block the Soul's Attendant and let the Khan die, interestingly enough. Although that does make some sense. As now they don't have to worry about us gaining a bunch of life. Play another land, they play Teferi, bounce a token, play an Astrolabe, draw a card, another Astrolabe, draw a card. They're really digging deep. I think presumably they're just looking for Urza at this point. We draw a card off Sky Hussar, play Soul Warden, which we find we've got 2 Kettra's Monuments. Unfortunately, Kettra's Monument is legendary, so you cannot play multiple copies. But we do run 4 because it's such a powerful ability for our deck. Teferi ticks up, which isn't particularly relevant. We're just going to keep drawing cards. We now find a Soul's Attendant. I suppose the interesting thing about this match-up, if anything, is that it does show what our deck is sort of supposed to do, because we ended up in a grindy matchup against another deck. The sad thing is that we're not really winning this race necessarily. Although, as a matter of fact, we currently are winning this race. But our opponent's going to start activating Thopter Foundry. We're going to gain 2 life per Thopter made. So it just ends up being a very grindy, horrible game, which is very frustrating. Also stacking a bunch of Soul Warden / Soul's Attendant activated abilities does a bit of a havoc with your clock. I think if we were playing in paper, this matchup probably just would have ended a lot sooner in our opponent's favour, probably. But so now we get to play God Eternal Aketra, which is a very fun and cool card, and start making zombies. Attack with the Loxodon, because why not? I think I'm throwing Whir of Inventions here for nothing in particular. They get an Astrolabe in the end. I'm not really sure what they were looking for, because they tapped for 5 but didn't really find anything. Sai is kind of a problem. It can draw them lots of cards, and eventually they'll probably find Urza, but it essentially just takes them a long time to do so. So we get to a point where we can make a pretty good attack. I'm not sure if we attack this turn, or maybe it's next turn. So we can play a bunch of Conquistadors, which makes 2 tokens per Conquistador. Obviously these zombies are 5/5 Vigilance zombie warriors. So certainly the game is not up currently. I don't know whether our opponent could have made more Thopters and if they weren't so worried about our Soul Warden, etc. But yeah, we're on 63 life. I attack here, and yeah, this is the point where I could have won the game, I think. I'll come close to it. Oh no, it's not this turn, I think it's next turn. So our opponent draws a bunch of cards with Sai. For whatever reason, they don't do a very good job of finding Urza, so they sack a bunch of things to save some life. We probably could have attacked a lot harder there, and probably should have done, I think, in hindsight. I think over the past couple of turns we probably could have done with doing that. Our opponent bounces to draw a card, getting rid of a zombie token. Plays an Astrolabe, which makes another token from Psi. Passes the turn back. So I tap down the Soul's Attendant and Soul Warden because I figure they're the cards that we want the most. But maybe we should have just attacked with them. I draw Thirst of Virtue. I was planning to flash it into play to surprise our opponent, but I forgot that there was a Teferi in play, which obviously changes that up quite a bit. We can't flash anything into play, so yeah, I kind of misplayed there. I probably should have just cast the Force of Virtue or activate the Chef Neptunes ahead of time. So we go for a big attack here, but it could have been bigger and probably should have been bigger. So this is where we come close to winning the game, but again, it's kind of questionable whether we should have ever been in a position to win this game. Because I think a lot of it was more the practicalities of having to repeatedly activate Thopter Foundry being just a general annoyance with all the triggers and everything else that would have clogged up the clock for everyone involved. But yeah, so I get to kill a lot of stuff and get our opponent down to 9. So I think if we'd played the Force of Virtue and attacked with everybody, we may have just been able to actually just win the game. But unfortunately we don't get to correct our mistake, as our opponent, I believe, sticks an Urza this turn. So I mean, they've drawn a lot of cards, so we can't really be too upset that they get the Urza. But yeah, they get there, and this actually is infinite, so you can tap the Sword of the Meek to activate the Thopter Foundry, which makes infinite Thopters. So this is really where we're at the sort of, technically we're dead, but as a matter of practice, it's going to be quite difficult for them to do that in the time available, given that we're on like approaching 100 life. So this is kind of gaming the system. I didn't really like this, but we played a long game, and I was a bit frustrated at this point that we probably could have won and probably should have won. And then the following turn, our opponent drops the Urza, which completely prevents us from winning, which is just kind of frustrating in general. And yeah, we can't respond to any of this by like killing Urza because our opponent's got Teferi. So we could have responded to the Sword of the Meek with a path, in theory, and prevented them from just going infinite, but unfortunately that's not something we could do here. So yeah, the game goes on, but it really shouldn't have done. I should have conceded. I'm obviously low on time, our opponent's low on time, and it all just becomes a little bit awkward. And yeah, I just got a bit tilted by this, the way this match went, I think, which is never a good thing. So this is the match, just for completeness sake anyway. Well, I mean, this is the first game, sorry. So we'll go into game 2, I think, and give this up. I think I eventually conceded just to the basic idea that we're dead, and I didn't really want to win just by trying to clock our opponent out of the game. Okay, so here we are with sideboard. We have some good cards for the sideboard against Thopter Foundry. Certainly Stony Silence is a good card. It stops Thopter Foundry. And Sword of the Meek as well. You can't use equipment with Stony Silence in play because equipment is a activated ability. We've got Leonin Relic Warder as well, which is nice. Just can pick up one of their combo pieces or any other sort of problematic artifact they may have, such as Ensnaring Bridge, etc., which all could be fairly problematic. We also have Ceremonious Rejection. Unified Will could potentially be good. Thalia is not too bad. Rest in Peace is also decent. I don't think we want to play that and Stony Silence. I think we'll just bring in the Stony Silences, but obviously Rest in Peace also prevents the Thopter Foundry, the Sword of the Meek combo. But I think Stony Silence is probably better. as it's likely to hit a few more things, such as the Mind Stone we saw, etc. So I think we definitely bring in the Stony Silences and the Relic Warders. We could bring in Rest in Peace, but I don't think we want to water our deck down too much, and that possibly does that. And then after that, I think we're probably mostly good. We could bring in Thalia, I suppose, but yeah, the tricky thing is that our deck just doesn't win quickly. So we're kind of hoping for one of our hate cards to shut them down and prevent them from putting their combo together, in which case we can hopefully outgrind them. In terms of cards to take out, I think Sky Hussar, as much as this is going to be a grindy game, we probably don't need 3. I think we probably don't need 3 in the deck, full stop. In my opinion, it seems slightly overkill. Loxodon probably doesn't do enough, so we can probably get rid of that. The God Eternal is quite good in a grindy game, if we can get it going. So I don't mind. I suppose we're largely cutting the top drops. I guess we probably still want Paths to deal with Urza and Psy, which are obviously problematic. Then yeah, it's kind of tricky after that. Maybe we could cut a Force of Virtue, given that the size of our creatures probably doesn't matter too much. But yeah, I think probably cut some number of Sky Hussars, probably the Loxodon as well, and maybe some number of Force of Virtues for our sideboard packages in Stony Silence and Relic Warder. Okay, so here we have a game 2. This hand is fine. We got the Relic Warder, which is one of our hate cards, as is Stony Silence. So yeah, this hand looks fairly good. Stony Silence might just win the game on its own, depending on what our opponent's got. We play Grafdigger's Cage, which I don't think does anything meaningful to our deck. Squadron Hawk and Ranger put cards into hand, not into play, so it's not so much of a problem. So we're going to route Stony Silence here. Opponent's going to activate the Bowl in response, otherwise they will miss out on their opportunity to do so. And draws a card. Pass it, send back. Stony Silence also turns off Urza's ability basically to make the artifacts generate mana, because that's an activated ability of the artifact. So I think just generally it's going to be better than Rest in Peace in this matchup. We're out of Soul's Attendant and the Squadron Hawk. Go to 19. Attack for 1. But yeah, size going to be irritating. I suppose size of our creatures kind of does matter in that sense. And the land. The Relic Warder just to clear this Thopter out of the way. I'm just going to respond by sacking it to Psy. We get 2 points of damage in. Maybe that's not the best use of Relic Warder. Maybe we should have just gone and played a Ranger. And I follow up with a white main line just to gain a life. But yeah, maybe we should just play Ranger and search something up. Search up another Soul Sister. Might have been a better use of our turn. One plays Urza, which doesn't do too much at the moment, but is still potentially very scary. Now we're going to play Ranger and get a couple of Soul Sisters. But yeah, as you can see, our time is running low on both sides of the table here. Punt's still able to make Thopters and things despite our Stony Silence, so their deck is slightly more versatile than you may think. And wait, were they able to tap that for mana? Tap and that's that. Oh, I guess Urza actually want to generate mana, so that, yeah, that doesn't prevent his ability. Okay, that's quite annoying. So yeah, so they're still able to make. He's still able to make mana off the artifacts. So everyone plays Karn, and they fetch up a Worm Coil Engine, which obviously is going to make any sort of attacks pretty difficult. And yeah, maybe we do want the forces here. I end up playing Squadron Hawk. I end up conceding. Our time is much lower than our opponent's. So it looks like we're likely to time out with all our triggers and things on the stack with the Soul Sisters. And also, I think our opponent's just in the ascendancy generally. Wormcoil Engine's going to be really difficult for us to do anything about. And so I pack it in. Not the most exciting game. We did get to do some pretty cool stuff in game 1, and you get to see kind of what the deck aims to do in a grindy long game. Certainly God Eternal Oketra and things are pretty cool when you get to just go off on a long game where your opponent's not really disrupting you. But sadly, because we don't have that sort of infinite end game, which Urza provides for the Thopter Foundry deck now, we end up on the losing end of this, and yeah, we just don't have the same options that they do. It feels like their deck is a better grindy deck than ours, and that's kind of what we're going for. So it's not good to be sort of outplayed at your own game, and I think that's kind of where the deck is, unfortunately. From my perspective, I think it's kind of in a tricky spot where it's not always the best deck at grinding out, even though that's precisely the game it wants to play. It's not good at aggro, and it's kind of weak to control as well, in that any sort of board wipe is pretty devastating. We don't really have a good way to come back from that either. So yeah, I feel like the deck's got quite a lot of weaknesses that make it tricky. So it can be fun. Certainly going to like 100 life and generating tons of creatures is a lot of fun, but it takes a long game to achieve that, and certainly even the long and grindy games don't always come our way, unfortunately.